America is home to 33 million small businesses, the beating heart of communities across the country.
And proof that the American dream is still alive.
This is a show about those dreamers and doers and the communities they serve.
Their real life stories.
Their struggles and successes.
Their grit, determination, and passion.
And the people who fight
to keep their American dream alive.
I'm Alfredo Ortiz.
I'm Elaine Parker.
And it's time for another episode of Main Street Matters,
America's small business megaphone.
Hi, and welcome to another episode of Main Street Matters, America's small business megaphone. I'm Elaine Parker, the president of the Job Creators Network Foundation.
And I'm Alfredo Ortiz, CEO of Job Creators Network.
Please subscribe to the show at salempodcastnetwork.com or wherever you get your podcasts from. Alfredo, today we are joined by Brock Fankhauser, who is the founder of New Style Communities, and they are building age-restricted, low-maintenance communities in North and South Carolina. We have a lot of, we call them 55-plus communities in Florida, so I'm very familiar with them. But this one's a little more distinct because the community, the highlight in the community, well, they're just outside of Charlotte, North Carolina, and they call it 1776 Gastonia, which is much more than just low maintenance housing community catered to those who are 55 and older. It's actually part of a movement that's celebrating American patriotism and combines it with the American dream of homeownership. Neighbors of all walks of life are coming together to celebrate their rich history and to plant seeds of liberty so that future generations can continue to enjoy the American spirit. So I'm looking forward to learning about that community in North Carolina. But first, I thought we would talk a little bit about some of the economic reports we saw last week. We saw GDP come out, which is, of course, higher than expected. And the PCE, or the Personal Consumption Expenditures Index, grew by 3% in June year over year. First, can you just explain what PCE is? I think sometimes people's eyes roll back in their heads with all of these economic reports.
Yeah, I mean, that's basically just, it's a index of people spending. That's all, what it really is. And so, when the PCE is up, Biden, I think, is touting it as a good thing. But again, you and I have talked about this. Spending is up because people are paying more but getting less. So it's a simple concept overall. And but of course, the White House and the media loves touting that, along with other economic factors that are coming out, is why the economy is doing great and why the Bidenomics is actually working. But we know that it's not working.
If inflation is up, I think you mentioned in your op-ed last week, 16% over the entire term of Biden's presidency, then if people are spending 16% or more on other things like some groceries, food products are up even as high as 20%, and gas is still up 50%. I know that doesn't make a lot of headlines, but we're still paying 50% more for gas than we were when President Biden first came into office. And inflation continues to grow faster than the Fed's sort of target number was about 2% is what they're targeting. And we're still, I think the last report came in at 4%. Was that right?
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah. So the Fed did what last week? Increased interest rates again. And it's just becoming more and more painful.
Yeah. We'll probably see one more quarter point increase before the end of the year. So this would be probably the most amount of rate hikes in over 23 plus years, I think, that we've seen from the Fed. So again, but why is Jerome Powell doing that? To combat Biden inflation? I mean, that's, again, the biggest reason why. And frankly, I'm kind of surprised that we haven't seen a slowdown overall the economy. But you could say that Powell's actually orchestrated a pretty soft landing potentially here, which is great news for the American consumer. But I am still concerned, though, that it's really more of a delay of the recession from this quarter potentially into end of fourth quarter, early first quarter of next year.
Yeah, I know. I know you said that. So, hopefully the Fed can continue to try to find a balance. Unfortunately, its balance is on the painful side. But, I know that, we've started a campaign last year called the Great Opportunity Project. And it was really successful in taking a look at what the states are doing and what some of these conservative led governors that are led by conservative governors, what these states have done. And so that's why we called it the Great Opportunity Project, is really to highlight some of these successful state policies that I think some people could argue is kind of propping up the federal government's numbers in helping them. But when you look at states like where I'm at in Florida, where you are in Georgia, Texas, Arizona, I mean, those governors, starting with COVID, found a way to balance
Right.
the health and safety of their constituents with the health of their economies. And they were able to rebound from COVID and the closures much faster. And some of these governors either didn't close at all, like Governor Kristi Noem, or they closed for a very short period. I think your governor, Governor Kemp,
Mm-hmm.
was the first governor to open in the country.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, and frankly, all small business owners out here in Georgia, I mean, are very pleased with that decision because they were actually able to get out of COVID a lot faster than the other states were. And it was critical. I mean, we have folks down here, friends of ours that are just down the street that own a restaurant that are so thankful to Governor Kemp for that decision. And like Governor Kemp, and like you said, other red state governors that followed suit. All those states are doing quite well. Unemployment is at really almost record level lows there, and I mean overall, the economy has rebounded, but still has a lot more to do and a lot more to go. But unfortunately, again, inflation has kind of come along with that. And Biden loves blaming Putin, or loves blaming anything else but himself. But it really was his decision. I keep saying this over and over. His decision on what he did with domestic energy production that really got us to where we are today. If he hadn't made that decision and we had kept our badge as a net exporter of energy, I think we'd be in much better shape as an economy with lower inflation, where people's wages are actually making a difference in terms of having higher wages. But right now, any higher wages are offset by higher inflation.
Yeah, I have to chuckle. I'm sure you've seen Governor Noem, Kristi Noem's commercials in South Dakota. At least they're running like crazy here,
Yeah.
where she's a plumber in one and a welder in another. And I mean, she's got reason to brag. I mean, she's got, first of all, her state's, like Florida, there's no income tax, no state income tax.
Right.
They reciprocate on licensing, so they'll take out of state licensing for trades and dental hygienists and other industries like that. But they have an unemployment rate about 1.8%, probably the lowest in the nation, and they've got thousands and thousands of jobs to fill. So she's literally recruiting across the country, and her commercials are actually really quite entertaining.
Yeah, they're great. I mean, I love Governor Noem. I mean, she's done a fantastic job in her state. But again, I mean, we got to give kudos to all the red state governors. Quite frankly, I mean, all their states are doing extremely well. Record low unemployment rates. Small business owners are really doing well there. I mean, it's no surprise that folks from like California and New York are flowing over to Texas and Georgia and building, putting up their businesses there, because it's especially Florida. Actually, there's a lot from the Northeast, from the New York area moving down there. And so, it's funny because Biden was touting during Small Business Week that the number of small businesses opening was like a record level. Interestingly enough, when we dug into that, I think you remember this well, is that they were actually only reporting on a gross level. They weren't net of all the closures. So, for example, if a business closed in New York to move down to Florida, they only counted the opening permit, or the permit needed to open the business up in Florida, not the fact that it moved from New York to Florida. And so, again, the White House does a great job of just spinning fiction, and I was like saying that they should be winning what is it, Pulitzer Prize or whatever that award is for best fiction story.
That's why I love talking to these small business owners, because it takes away all of the spin. It doesn't matter what the economic numbers are. It doesn't matter that the president and the administration officials are out in force traveling the country telling people Bidenomics is great and you're doing great and your income is up and the economy
Right.
is doing wonderful, because people feel how they feel. I mean, you can't tell someone they don't feel something when they do.
Well, and not only is it feeling, but they see it in their pocketbooks, right? In their checkbooks. I mean, when they, I know every time I go to the grocery store and I'm walking out with 3 bags that would have cost me, $40, 2 years ago. Now I'm walking out into $70, $75. I mean, it's just crazy. And it's not like I'm going to, some high end grocery store. I mean, this is walking in, getting the basics at a Kroger, and I just don't know how folks are being able to afford this economy that Biden has spun.
Yeah, absolutely. Hi, folks. Elaine Parker here from Main Street Matters, America's small business megaphone. Here's important news. Forecasters from the University of Arizona warn that 2023 will be a very active hurricane season, and they're asking people to get prepared. They expect the number of major hurricanes this year to be similar to 2017, which saw the extremely intense and damaging hurricanes Harvey, Irma, and Maria. Yikes! The clock is ticking. The time to prepare is right now. How bad can it get? When Hurricane Ida hit the Gulf Coast, it destroyed countless homes and left many without access to food and clean water. Millions lost power, some for weeks. The floods that followed the hurricane washed out roads and made it possible for grocery stores to restock their shelves. Families were left hungry and desperate, waiting for help that was slow to arrive. But what if you didn't have to rely on FEMA to provide for your family during a crisis? The answer is simple. Be prepared with emergency food kits from 4 Patriots. Their long-lasting and delicious food options are specifically designed to provide you and your loved ones with the sustenance you need when you need it most. 4 Patriot survival food kits are hand-packed in the USA, last up to 25 years, come packed inside covert storage bags, include a wide variety of delicious breakfasts, lunches, and dinners, and they're backed by thousands of 5-star customer reviews. 4 Patriots survival food is not just for natural disasters, because in today's world of uncertain supply chains and unpredictable emergencies, it's more important than ever to have a backup plan. Whether it's temporary power outage, a winter blizzard, or rising food costs, you can rest easy knowing that you have a reliable food source to see you through. And right now, you can go to 4patriots.com and use code STREET to get 10% off your first purchase on anything in the store, including our emergency food supply kits designed to last up to 25 years. Just go to 4patriots.com and use code STREET to get 10% off your first purchase of 4 Patriots survival food. That's 4patriots.com. Use code STREET. Well, I'm excited because now it is time for our interview with Brock Fankhauser. As I mentioned, Brock is the founder of New Style Communities, who has come up with a fantastic idea of buying 43 plots of land outside of Charlotte and turning that into a 55-plus community and giving it a patriotic twist, bringing residents back to the America we all loved as children. Every house is required to display an American flag, and streets are named after historical figures such as Betsy Ross, Paul Revere, and Constitution Lane. Brock, welcome to Main Street Matters, America's small business megaphone.
Thank you, Elaine. Thank you, Alfredo. We appreciate it.
Your 1776 Gastonia properties, tell us about it. I know we saw you on Fox News talking about your communities. Give us a little background.
Yeah, I consider myself to be a patriot. I love the United States of America. I love a lot of our history, our traditions. I love the founding ideals of this country. I love the beauty of this country. And at the same time, I love building communities. I love developing property and designing houses that go on that property. And it just occurs to me that in my way, with our company, we can combine elements of patriotism, respect for our country, and the American dream of owning a home. And so that's our 1776 Gastonia, underway right now in suburban Charlotte. And the Fox News piece a few weeks ago initially caught us by surprise. We did not know they were going to air that piece on Fox and Friends Sunday. And the next thing I knew, our website was being overwhelmed with support for what we're doing. And we're delighted to report that it's continued ever since then. So it's been a little bit of a surprise, but we were hopeful that would be the initial outpouring of support. And so it's affirming that maybe we're onto something.
Yeah, now my understanding, Brock, is that basically it's all sold out, right? The project's all sold out.
I wish I could report that we're sold out now. We actually had to pause our rollout, which was slated to occur the day following the Fox and Friends piece. Instead, I found myself on a flight with my wife, Nicole, to New York City because Fox wanted us in studio that Monday for a Fox and Friends live chat. And then later that day, they wanted us at Fox Business. And with the leads that came in that 24-hour period, which I've reported rivaled the volume we would normally get in a year.
Wow.
It led us to pause our rollout strategy because this was going to be some type of a mass sales event. And so in the weeks that have followed, we have kind of taken that funnel of leads, which there were well-wishers who aren't really buyers. There were people who are maybe what I would describe as keyboard terrorists who think they can intimidate us. And then there's legitimate buyers. And we're at that point right now. We're starting to make appointments for contracts. We're going to know real soon the momentum that we have. I suspect, given our experience in this, it's going to be robust. And it leads me to conclude that this is not going to be the last one.
Oh yeah, no, I can't imagine that. Now you mentioned keyboard terrorists. I love that term, but I was going to ask because I assumed you probably were getting some emails, a few emails of people who weren't quite aligned with the thought process that you had and why you're doing it. Am I correct in that assumption, Brock?
You're very correct in that assumption. It's unfortunate. We're not used to that in our business, but it doesn't surprise me that when you take a stand on anything really in our society, there's going to be pushback. I've said, though, from the beginning, I mean, I look at those people, all right, that they're not on board with us right now, but they could be in a year. I'm not ideological in that sense, and I do think there's some psychosis out there that we're not here to resolve. But
Right.
This is a unification movement in addition to being a patriotic movement. And I hope that those people see, and let's flash forward a year, that this truly started out and continues to be a unification movement.
Yeah, it's amazing, this cancel culture, right? I mean, people just anything that goes towards patriotism now. It's just such a shame. You get such pushback, and people start throwing around words that are just horrible. I know in the stuff that we do, which really we just support entrepreneurialism, small business, free enterprise. We get our fair share of those nasty emails, trust me, as well. And it's just such a shame because, I wrote a book actually about how entrepreneurship is really the best way to bridge our racial and economic divide in this country. And unfortunately, a lot of people on the left don't believe that, which, I come from a poor family that entrepreneurship is really what got me to where I am today. In fact, I was a very, very small home builder here in Georgia, and really proud of what I did. And it was so much fun doing it and watching new families move into these homes. I mean, it's really, really quite gratifying.
Well, Brock, Were you a home builder before you started this community?
Yeah, I've been building and developing property for 25 years.
Okay. So I'm going to probably state the obvious, and that's that you're not old enough to live in your community. Is that correct?
I'm getting there, but it's a 55 and older community. What's interesting about those, and in compliance with federal law, 80% of the households within our developments must have one person who's 55. That's the threshold for us to be able to target our messaging and to have our governing documents read that way. We can't drop below 80%, but I could live in one of my communities, and so could someone under the age of 55, as long as it's not more than 20% of the total.
Which actually nowadays, with so many folks now with older parents, this is probably a very attractive feature, to be able to live with your parents now. Because a lot of us have that situation where we do really have to move our parents in with us.
Yeah, and we're mindful too. You could have a situation where you have an age qualified resident in one of our communities, and there's an unfortunate event that happens to one of their children, which now makes them the guardian of a young adult or young person who otherwise would have to leave an age-restricted community. We don't want that to be the case either. And there are some 55 and older developers, mainly the big ones. They will age restrict and make it 100%. And we just don't see the need for those types of restrictions and governance when what we've been doing for a long time it fits the bill. It works.
What's your message to some of the folks out there I've seen who think you have a political agenda? I live in Florida, so I'm very familiar with 55 plus communities. They're everywhere, as I'm sure you know. But there's obviously I've not seen one with the focus on patriotism, which I love, but I know that comes with its own criticism, as you've learned from having the national spotlight on you. What's your message to people who claim you have a political agenda here?
Yeah. Patriotism predates the modern bi-party political system by centuries. We were patriotic before we were even a nation. And so we're trying to tap into that, and being able to demonstrate that and to continue to operate in a pre-political or apolitical environment is going to be inherent in everything we do. No one will be able to point to us and say that you're aligned to a political messenger or you're aligned to a political party. We simply won't go there. And it's important to us to hold that line. And that's always going to be the case. And it's going to be important for the people that live in our neighborhoods to have that resonate with them. Just because you live in our community and you fly that beautiful American flag does not give you the license to use that as a springboard for your political messages. Well, I'm the leader of this 1776 movement, but as people carry this torch for us into communities around the country, they're going to have to continue to abide by that messaging. It's so important and critical to us. So I'll remind people, patriotism predates the founding of our country. And as we stated earlier on, we're not at a high point of patriotism, that's for sure. But patriotism has always ebbed and flowed in our nation, just like waves in the ocean. And so we're not at a peak wave right now, and it's going to take some time to get back there, which I think we will. And doing that in part is just let the people, the 535 elected representatives on the Potomac River, let them do their jobs, right? Us, though, we want to be at a zip code level, making our community better. And to do that, we believe from the beginning, we're going to detach from political messaging, judicial philosophy, and foreign policy and tax policy. It's not relevant in our campaign at all.
I know, I mean, it's obviously widely publicized that flying an American flag is required by the HOA. what other sort of provisions are there that you're pledging to be when you want to be a member of this community?
People who buy a home from us will have the opportunity to review our governing documents, our declaration. The first page is a preamble, and it sets the tone early that there's about 10 things that we ask our buyers to affirm their allegiance to this country, to recognize that the Constitution is the founding document. We ask them to commit to each other, their livelihoods, their patriotism to their fellow neighbors. And as you go through the documents, it's not a lot of language. We have a thing called the 1776 Standards, and it's basically affirmations that one homeowner pledges to the other that are in congruence with being patriotic. Beyond that, and you mentioned the flag, and we've gotten a considerable amount of press, and I think the word required is the wrong word in our desires, because the flag is an architectural element. It is on our construction drawings right now, and it will be installed before anyone ever moves into a home, and they know that it's an architectural element. When we transfer title to someone the day of closing, that person will pledge to their fellow homeowners that the flag will continue to fly. It's a parchment promise. And so long as that person's word is good, that promise holds, the flags continue to fly. We've been asked to think through a situation in which someone removes it. I care not to go there, because that's not why people are moving into the neighborhood. But I will tell you that our governing documents do not have an element of force when it comes to someone who chooses that they aren't going to honor their parchment promise. And so for those who think that we're tyrants, just read the documents to understand that there's no penalty for failing to comply with the documents. There you go.
Yeah, I mean, if anything, Brock, I mean, I think, the nice part, when I heard you on Fox and talk about the community, in my mind, I said, what a neat place to live, because, nowadays you're almost kind of fearful to show your patriotism. I mean, it's gotten that bad in some cases where, quite frankly, I will tell you that in the community that I lived, I had my flag taken down a couple of times. So, you're kind of fearful to actually fly the flag because of what the repercussions are of showing your patriotism. So I actually think the idea of having this community of haven of folks who are like-minded from that perspective, that love this country, that want to show their patriotism in a safe environment, I think it's just a really fantastic. So I like the idea that it's not a requirement, but really something that fosters community.
It does. And, there's other things within the community that may not be as visible as an American flag on every house, but street names. We've taken a lot of time and thought to come up with street names that align to patriotism in our history. This first neighborhood in Gastonia, I think the street as you arrive is Paul Revere Drive. How fitting. And as you make your first turn, you're on Constitution Drive, and there's Betsy Ross Drive, and there's Gadsden Court, and maybe one other. And our goal, because as we roll out other neighborhoods, we're going to need quite a menu of street names that play along into this theme. So people who don't even live in one of these neighborhoods will be reminded along the way, tastefully, we think, that this is a patriotic neighborhood of people who've made a commitment to each other and to our country, that they're going to do something about this. They're going to take that element that, well, should I do this? Can I do this? And it's going to be affirmed that what you're doing is right, and it's making a difference.
Yeah. No, that's amazing. Sadly, I actually do qualify now this year for to live in one of your communities. So I might just have to go down and check it out personally to see what's available down there, because it does sound very enticing, actually, to be able to be around like-minded individuals. I mean, I mentioned to you briefly, that I come from a very poor background. Both my parents were immigrants. They came from Mexico. My dad was a tailor. My mom was a housekeeper and seamstress. And boy, it was tough growing up. And now I'm living part of the American dream. And only in this country do things happen like that, where you can go from going through trash cans to standing next to the president of the United States, doing what I do. And it's just, I'm proud to be in America, and it's just great to be in a community, sounds like, where you can do that and be proud of that as well.
Yeah, the American dream, right? That's why we call it that. To hear that story, that is just iconic with the American dream. Even though you may not be able to buy Alfredo in the first neighborhood, really one of our overarching goals, and it's largely in response to some of the incoming registrations that we've got in the last few weeks. There's builders in North Dakota, in Utah, in Texas, in Tennessee, and I could name others who have said to me, sign me up. I've got my own building company. I don't need any plans. I don't need any recipes. I want your marketing. I want your brand in our community, and I want everything that this stands for. How are we going to do this? And while that was maybe a long-term goal of ours, we've had to advance that, we call it licensing or franchising concept, immediately, to roll it out of these people who want to be in Georgia and who have stories like yours and that want to contribute today. So I think starting in August, we will be able to license to builders and developers around the country who want to do this, and we can keep that flame dialing up a little bit, well beyond what I can do with limited resources as a Charlotte and Greenville-based developer.
Oh, that is fascinating. You might, I believe that would be probably one of the first in the country, right? A franchise home developer system, I guess. I can't think of any other one that's like that then.
I am currently a franchisee of a company known as Epcon Communities, started by my father. Their system, though, is it's 55 and older housing, but they give you the products, and they give you the floor plans, and they give you the development system, and they give you marketing. It's an extremely robust system. The 1776 license would be more just the name. You get the name and you get the marketing that, because it's trademarked. We trademarked 1776. We were approved in March after a little more than a year in waiting. But Epcon would definitely be among the first or second home building franchise operators in the country, and been doing it for more than 30 years. We would definitely be the first licensor of a name like 1776 and the brand that goes with it, with patriotism.
That is a fascinating concept. I'll tell you, Brock, that I know quite a few home builders here in Georgia that might just be interested in that. So you and I will definitely be in contact afterwards, because I think this is a big opportunity. I think you're really onto something. I said, like I said, I know that the Fox polls and other polls are saying that patriotism is an all-time low, but I really do believe that there are people out there, patriots, that really want this community and want this ability to be able to share in that mindset with others, and probably have some darn good 4th of July street parades and stuff like that, like it used to be, I guess, huh?
Absolutely. And when I hear any of those polls, especially the Fox News one, how patriotism, I think the number was 39% of the people identify themselves as patriotic. That excites me, because it tells me, for those of us that are willing to do the work that it takes to ignite more patriotism, there's a lot of upside to it. Imagine this movement of patriotism scored at 90%. It would tell me that we're pretty satisfied with our patriotism in this country. Maybe something like 1776 wouldn't resonate. But at 39%, for those of us willing to do the heavy lifting, that number can go up to 50 right now.
Right.
And beyond 50, absolutely. And so I look at it as having a ton of upside. And that to me is encouraging.
Glass half full, right, Brock?
Always full, right? We don't take into account air, right? The glass has air molecules in it. It doesn't have to be just water, does it?
That's right. That's right. That's a good point. That's a good point. Elaine, I know you had a follow-up question you wanted to ask.
I do. It's the nerd in me. I have to ask about the building industry. Too. What are some of the policies that the building industry faces, and the policy challenges that you're facing from either regulatory or supply chain, labor? Talk us through some of those challenges, because I know since COVID, every industry has been impacted.
Yeah, that supply chain debacle really hit us hard, hit the whole industry hard for at least a 2-year window. I think we're largely out of it now, but holy cow, what's to stop it from happening next month on something? That was disturbing to us because we're a business that largely does what we call pre-sale homes. We will sell a home today to someone at a fixed price, a date of delivery that's 6 months from now, and we take on the risk of rising prices in that 6-month window. Well, holy cow, in 2021 and in part of 2022, we had so many sales that were in what we call backlog, guaranteed prices to people, and yet our trades were experiencing something that has never happened. And if we could get product, call it windows or lumber, we were paying astronomical prices for it. That was devastating to our business. And for those, maybe some of the national home builders who spec build a lot of stuff, they carry a lot of inventory, they had the flexibility of adjusting their prices toward the end of that 6-month cycle to kind of capitalize on a margin. We did not. So that concerns me. I don't know that we've taken substantive measures to fix that. I don't think we have. Only by rising interest rates have we been able to tamp down some of the supply out there. But I'm concerned about that long term, and should it happen again, we haven't changed our business model to get away from pre-sales. We think that there's a lot of buyers out there, particularly 55 and older, who like to buy something today and have the time that it takes to get their ducks in a row, to sell the home that they've lived in for decades. They're a great candidate for a home that's not going to be ready for 6 months. Mm-hmm. Beyond the supply chain, we can't overlook the cost of our houses before we ever put a shovel in the ground. And so the regulatory state, when it comes to things like stormwater control, which 25 years ago basically didn't exist. Nowadays, I mean, you've got to budget $20,000 a house for that type of a condition that is heavy in permitting and oversight. I don't have the stats on me, but the National Association of Home Builders has a number that it publishes. This is the cost of a home before you put a shovel in the ground for the regulatory side of it. It's a big number, and it's only going to go up, and it's going to pinch the people who are on the margin. And that's the tough thing that we as an industry are going to have to deal with, is how can we, when, they talk about affordable housing, right? Well, what about affordable land? What about affordable permits? Because for us as the creators, the developers and the builders, you can't just put the burden on us, housing, right? Because there's a lot of ingredients in that housing cake that we don't have any control over. And it's important for us to come out as an industry and to tackle some of those ingredients that are controlled by others, so that ultimately there are more people who can come on the margin and participate in this American dream.
We like to call those the middlemen.
Yeah, Brock, to that point, on the I did a project in Georgia where an overzealous permitter, let's say, a city personnel person, had basically halfway through the project had us put a whole separate water retention program, which pretty much wiped out my profit. It was absolutely ridiculous. And he basically said, well, you have a choice. You can either abandon your project, walk away from it, lose what you had in it, or keep on moving forward and make no money. So he goes, it's your choice. So, I mean, it's to your point, it's just unbelievable. And we really have to stop that runaway regulatory environment, because it really is going to kill us, I think, as an industry.
The NAHB, I wish I could say I know their advocacy and their positions well. I don't. I try to stay out of that because I don't have any power. I don't have any clout. We've probably, as 1776 evolves beyond its initial phases, right? Maybe we can become an advocacy group to help expand this more and more, because we will see that while this might be a great idea in a zip code on another side of the country, there could be people there who can't afford it. And if this message, this patriotism, is going to expand beyond our wildest dreams, maybe at some point when we have the time to do it, we can step into that advocacy role and help with it. An idea would be private inspections. If you think about the monopoly that jurisdictions have nationwide on home building inspections, you must use this municipality and their inspectors. Well, why? Can't we have private inspectors? Could you have an architect who has all of the licensure and the know-how to 24 hours a day be available to inspect our homes? And I think it would satisfy the consumer. Ultimately, that's what we want to do, and build good houses. Just an example there of something that really doesn't happen anywhere around our country. And if it does, it's few and far between. Little things like that make a difference.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, they make a huge difference. I was just thinking about in California, for example, where I understand that every new home now, solar panels are required. I believe that added about $30,000 to the cost of a new home.
Yeah, we can't have that.
Brock, what you're doing right now and talking to us is advocating. I mean, talking about and educating Americans and the people listening about these ingredients, what we like to call middlemen along the way, that drive up the cost of housing, drive up the cost of your product. I think advocating starts with educating. And so when you're carrying that message and helping people better understand that government is not necessarily your partner, but many times your cost drivers, it helps empower people so they understand better and they vote more with their pocketbooks instead of with their, hearts. Vote with your head instead of your heart, and understanding what policies will help them achieve their American dream, whatever that is. And if homeownership is in there, then homeownership too.
Yeah. I wish we were at a better place with zoning. Zoning is becoming an issue that for us really wasn't a negative factor up until recently, because we do 55 and older housing. 55 and older housing is very compelling at the municipal level because you aren't impacting schools. You can't say that we're contributing to overcrowding of schools. In fact, we're making it a little bit better because these are people without kids that are paying the same tax base without the burden to go along with it. You go further along, we're averaging maybe 1.4 occupants per house. They're automatically going to be using less utilities, less water, less sewer, less driving. You could go on and on. We were an easy case for zoning for many, many years. Now, however, in these areas where we once were a little bit beyond a rubber stamp, we knew we were going to get it, but it took a little bit of work. It's hard no's. They don't want anything. And what's happened is the constituents of these areas, who very well might want to live in a 1776 neighborhood, know that they can stop all development with just their voices. And they're the ones showing up at our town hall meetings, and they're putting an end to our visions of expanding the American dream. And they do it effectively with one word: traffic. Traffic. And so this municipality may not, through whether it's the Department of Transportation at the state level, they haven't put a dollar into the infrastructure outside a project that we want to build ever, right? And we don't have any impact on that infrastructure. We didn't build it. And yet we're told you can't proceed. You have no chance of approval, even with your great vision, because of traffic. And what happens, these constituents who, again, might love a 1776, know that to a certain degree, they aren't adding any supply. And if you're not adding supply to the marketplace, one could make the argument that your value on your home might be going up because you don't have to deal with competition. So we got to figure out zoning and make it more flexible. We have to take the stigma away from traffic. And I'd love to find someone, maybe through your network, can we find someone to endeavor a study that shows a correlation between traffic and home appreciation? Are they related to each other? And at the same time, if there's no traffic, is there flatlining home appreciation or even declining?
Right.
Because there's got to be trade-offs. And so I would be willing to bet you that someone could find a correlation between traffic and rising home values. And would people rather have a little bit of a burden with traffic to deal with, but rising home values, or the opposite?
Right. No, I think you're right. I think you're onto something there. And we might have to flip through our network to see if there is somebody that would be interested in doing that study, because I think that is fascinating. I know we're running out of time, but I did have one quick question about the future communities that you might be looking at. Eventually, will you be looking at communities that kind of have also maybe like centralized services for those 55 and up, like pharmacies and doctors and stuff like that make it easier for them to get around and do things like that within the community?
I don't have that on my radar, but I know it's a big deal out there, and there are people already doing that. My goal would be, let's get them bought in on a 1776 license, right? They can keep doing what they're doing and maybe expand it with the branding that comes with our name. For me, even though I know there's a market there for that, we are so in a niche and we're good at it. I don't want to leave that zone because failure, even if you're good in this business, is always an option. And my goal is to minimize the opportunities for failure. But there's already great people out there doing assisted living communities and merging it with active communities and communities with children. And I'll bet you if we got together again in a couple years, there's probably going to be master developers out there who do thousands of homes in contained communities that buy onto this brand. They are the ones with the vision to do what you're talking about, to have the type of community where you can be born in it, you can live a fruitful life in it, and you can have your last breath in it, and you can call it home for 100 years. There are people already talking about doing that stuff.
Well, this is truly fascinating, Brock. This is such a great idea. We definitely should revisit in a couple of years. I'd love to see where things are progressing, because I truly believe that this is just the beginning, and we're going to see something great come from all of this. So congratulations to a great marketing thought here. And I love the idea of the franchising idea. Like I said, I'm sure I'll spread the word here in Georgia and try to send people your way.
Thank you, Alfredo. I really appreciate that.
Absolutely.
Well, Brock, thanks so much for joining us. And for our listeners and viewers, where can they go to find more information about the community?
Yeah, they can go to 1776community.com. We've got a great website up and running, and they can get all they want from there.
Excellent. Well, thank you so much again. Thanks for joining Main Street Matters, America's small business megaphone. You can listen to it on SalemPodcastNetwork.com, wherever you get your podcast from. We release a new episode every Wednesday and Thursday, so check back often. Thanks.